Mark here for another great Wisdom and Knowledge 5 podcast episode, and I'm just thrilled to bring on self-sabotage coach, among many other things, Jason Christoff, and we are going to talk about the power of the mind. Thanks so much, Jason, and give a brief, background of your credentials.
Well, basically, I'll tell you what I've been doing lately, so you can understand the credential aspect. Because basically, I've been invited to. I mean, my last talk was at the Japanese Parliament. I talk at different places at different events, but I spoke at the Japanese Parliament. Before that, I spoke at the Romanian Palace of the Parliament. I spoke at the U.S. Senate with Senator Ron Johnson at the COVID roundtable. I spoke at the European Parliament, and I speak at various events, but it's always about mind control, propaganda, psychological manipulation, brainwashing, and they're all sort of the same. And it's the same techniques they use to sell you Nike shoes or Under Armour or Teflon cookware, or you can use those modalities of mind manipulation to sell anybody anything.
Mhm.
And if the average person doesn't understand how their own mind works, so the group that is really good at manipulating you to do whatever, and you can use mind control to make you do good stuff too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not just for bad things. I could use mind control, and I do as my job. I use the same mind control tactics because there's only really a couple mind control tactics, and if you understand it, you can make people's lives better. But that's not what it's being used for today. It's being used for nefarious purposes and to make people run east looking for a sunset and rearrange the furniture on the deck of the Titanic. And I'll just tell you, if you really want to know how effective mind control can be at making you do things that you would never think you could ever do, I'm just going to give a short example, and people they feel free to email me for this example
Mhm.
because it's a made for Netflix special that I'm going to discuss right now for about 5 minutes
Okay.
that you cannot find on the internet very easily right now. Because if you did see it, you'd sort of understand what went on in 2020.
Mhm.
It's sort of a it sort of will give people great insight into how they were manipulated. So, this made for Netflix special has a title, and the title is The Push. And it was Netflix hired a UK mind control specialist named Darren Brown. And Darren Brown organized, they just told Darren, make it fantastical and jaw dropping. And you figure it out from there. Here's a couple $1 million. You go and figure it out from there. Let us know what you need. You have X amount of time. So Darren hired 70 actors, sat down with his knowledge of mind control with some other mind control specialists, and said, look, we got to wow the audience here. What are we going to do?
Mhm.
So they decided to call this thing The Push. They had 70 actors, and there was one victim. So, you have one mind control victim among 70 actors in a completely controlled environment. But the victim doesn't know it's a completely controlled environment. He thinks everybody's acting organically. And although the special, when you watch it, is only 1 hour, this real life drama, the stage production really probably went on for 2.5 hours. And you'll have to watch it to understand, but it ends on the build at the roof of a 10-story building. And the reason it's called The Push is there's an old man sitting with his feet off the precipice. You'll have to figure out why the old man is very dangerously sitting with his legs over the wall. Like, this is a very dangerous position to take on a 10-story building. But don't worry, it looks like it's an old man, but he's one of the actors. He's not even old, he's young, he's a stunt man, and he's completely wired, which harnessed, because I'm not going to do any spoiler alerts, but it's called The Push because they're trying to put as much group pressure as possible on this one mind control victim to go and push that man off the side of the building and murder him live on camera. But of course, this victim doesn't know there's 30 cameras focused on him. And every mind control tactic in the book was used. Every brainwashing tactic was used. I could pick them out a mile away. And Darren Brown did run this experiment with 4 different people, 4 different times, filmed in 4 different situations, and 3 out of the 4 murdered the man live on camera. So this is how powerful mind control can be. There's a certain structure and design to your behavioral pathways, which you know nothing about. They can be hacked, and Darren Brown made people commit murder in only 2 hours of working them over with these mind control tactics. The average person has been worked over by the same tactics since the day they flew out of the womb. And this is why their lives are so messy, because basically self-sabotage is mind control used in a way that makes you do illogical and irrational things to your detriment. But mind control is so powerful, you feel helpless to stop it, like smoking or drinking or watching Netflix or even working a job you don't like. You know you don't like it. You know you hate it, but you keep going anyway. And it's almost like it's an invisible force, but that's what mind control is. It's not a zombie. Like if I were to say, look, this guy's under mind control, the average person would think, oh, I'm going to look over and I'm going to see a zombie-like person drooling and, with their hands out in front of them, moaning and groaning, looking for brains. That's not what someone looks like when they're under mind control. They look like you and me, except they just do stuff that they can't stop doing that hurts their health, hurts their wealth, hurts their relationships, destroys them prematurely. I mean, look at 2020 when you had several billion people line up to basically do things that had no benefit for themselves. And although people like myself and millions of others, there's millions of people like me saying, hold on, whoa, slow it down a bit. You might want to look at this research, check out the liability clauses, look what's going on behind the scenes that they're not really hiding, but you got to dig a little bit. And then that person is so programmed and so mind controlled and brainwashed to go in that direction, they will tear you apart to remove you from the path so that they can get to the thing that's destroying them. And it's the same with alcohol, narcotics, going to bed late, watching Netflix, wasting your life scrolling your phone. And they know, even the person scrolling or smoking, they know it's useless. It has zero benefit, like zero. Even something like alcohol, it's been proven to have not only zero benefit, negative, there's no benefit. It's only negative. And most people have it as a ritual, and then they don't like their body, and they don't like how much money they have, and they don't like the state of their relationships. Well, what do you think happens when you poison yourself and you can't stop? But a lot of people too in the mind control field, and I'll give them this, they think there's something wrong with them. I'm a smoker, I can't stop. I'm a drinker, I can't stop. I'm a masturbator, I can't stop. There's nothing wrong with you. You're working as designed, just like those, like you can't, if you don't know how mind control works, you're going to do what they want you to do. And you can try to willpower it or draw a line in the sand. But when you hack this part of the brain, it's like an 800-pound gorilla. And it will grab you by the collar and it will drag you toward the programming. You can fight all you want. You're going in that direction. So if they program you to smoke, you're probably going to smoke till you kill yourself. And if they program you to drink, you're probably going to drink till you got no money, no one's around you, and you're in the hospital wondering, what the hell happened to my life? And the people who rule us not only know how to make us stand in line and demand a medical experiment, they're the ones driving the smoking. They're the ones driving the marijuana craze. They're the one driving the psilocybin craze. They're the coffee shops. And people, and this is how wide the aperture is. I mean, if you understand mind control and you watch a movie, you understand that one of the primary mind control modalities, and they want you to drink coffee. Because if you understand mind control like I do, all you have to do is watch a movie and watch the repetitive cueing in the movie to figure out what they want you to do. And then once you figure out that the most repetitive content is what wins out for the program, and the most repetitive content in all movies is coffee, the second is alcohol, then things start to coalesce. Like, why do they want us drinking coffee? Well, I would say you might want to read two books, Caffeine Blues by Dr. Stephen Chernisky, if you want to know the physical detriments of coffee. But there's mind control aspects too. All poisons make you weaker. Weaker humans comply more to command. Right?
Yeah.
And also caffeine's been shown to interfere with what's called hippocampal neurogenesis, which is a fancy word for long-term memory. So the more coffee you drink, the less ability you have to remember what happened 10 years ago. Now, if I'm in the ruling position, how much does that give me an advantage if I can sort of do an Men in Black memory wipe with the neuralizer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't see it. And you forget everything. You forget what freedom was like. You forget what it was like to have a job. You forget what it was like to go to the airport. And I mean, one of my teachers used to check his gun on as something he would put above his carry-on. He'd carry his gun on the plane. And he would smoke on the plane. Like, how much benefit would it be for a ruler to give people substances where they actually can't remember more than 10 years in the past? So these things are all important. So basically, my credentials is I go around the world, talk about this. I'm a great storyteller. That's why I'm invited to these conferences and speaking events, so that the average person can maybe in the future, we're not there yet, look at the TV and pick out the psyop of the day, because they all have the same characteristics. They do change. We're in a different one now than we were in 2020, and that confuses people.
Most definitely. Now, what about somebody who won't change, or they base things trauma, like, okay, I was traumatized growing up. How do people get sucked out of that type of mind control?
Well, the thing about everything you see today usually has a mind control aspect to it that benefits the ruling group. So the thing about this trauma, it's not an old word, it's a new word. It's a new diagnosis, and it's definitely a new self-diagnosis. So they've told people, if you've had a hard time in life, you can't really do anything until you address the trauma. But here's the problem. We're traumatized every day. And if you're waiting, and this is how the ruling group wins with this one particular psyop, is that there's a lot of repetition. Now, repetition is like 85% of all psyops, because we have a part of our brain that works sort of like a cut healing. If you cut your face shaving and maybe you're going on a date, you can't yell at your face and say, hey, I got a date. This doesn't look good. Can you heal a little faster? And the cut heals. It's automatic. It's outside your control. It's there to help you. Like if the cut didn't heal, you probably get gangrene and then things get really worse. So by that example, whoever's listening, you have things going on in your body that you don't control.
Mm-hmm.
You can admit that to yourself. Well, here's the scary part is that the subconscious, which heals the cut, is also looking for repetitive content in the field, in your environment, but you don't know it is. And there's a reason it does that. So it's always counting repetitive content. And it's almost like a waiter. It's like always writing down what's the most repetitive. And the reason it has this function, it's protective again. Like the cut healing is done out of love. Warehousing the repetitive content's also out of love because safety psychology is based on group acceptance. The bigger the herd, the more people like you, the safer you are. The most repetitive content represents what the bigger herd is saying, thinking, or doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an invisible data collection that's always going on. Like the first data mining facility is your own subconscious. And it's there only to find repetitive content. So again, it's outside your conscious awareness. It's invisible, just like a menstrual cycle, your hair growing, anything like that, even your heart beating, all functions you don't control. Not only does it download repetitive content, once it establishes the repetitive content in a certain duration, it tries to force you to adopt it as your own so that you blend in with what they believe is the bigger herd. And this is why repetition is the basis of all psyops, because this part of the brain is always invisibly, going out and trying to find repetitive content and then making you adopt it as your own. And this means truth doesn't matter. Repetitive content becomes truth. And this is the big problem. So back to the trauma issue is that the people ruling us know how to weaken us on so many different levels because weak animals need the herd more. So my subconscious can collect the repetitive content. But if I'm like a strong individual, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to feel the need to go toward the herd. But if I'm strong, I can stand my own ground. Like if I go to a Christmas party, and this is what happens in real time, okay? This is how your subconscious really works. You go to a Christmas party, and when you go in, your subconscious has already scanned a crowd for what's the most repetitive content, which is drinking alcohol. Now, I'm going to tell you how fast that scanning goes on. The part of the mind listening to you and I talk right now, so whoever's listening, you're listening with your conscious mind. And it's been proven to only handle 140 pieces of data a second. Your subconscious can handle 11 million pieces of data a second. So when you go into that Christmas party, your subconscious, you have no idea how fast it's who's got the same shoes as me. What's the cut of the suit? Am I fitting in? Am I accepted? Am I like the herd? And you can adopt herd-based behaviors. You can't change your suit, but how about if everybody's has a glass of alcohol in their hand?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're weak, you'll always get the signal to comply with the most repetitive content. Always. It's standard equipment. If you're weak, they're going to push you in there more. Your subconscious will say, you don't have the strength to be any different than the herd. You're too weak to put up a fight. So they poison us on all fronts to make us weak. The trauma, again, would be very repetitive over the last 30 years. The repetitive messaging around trauma is not only trauma is important, it's not important. And you can see if someone's under one of these mind control spells, because if you just felt super offended, because I told you trauma is not important, you're under that repetitive content spell. Because it has a big allure. It has a magnetic attraction because it's a reason to say I can't. I can't because I have trauma. And if you live in our society, it's a trauma fest. It's a nonstop trauma buffet. So the messaging is, unless you're completely cured of your trauma, you just keep trying to cure it. And only when you're cured can you move ahead and do great things. Now, why would you think they would give us that idea on a repetitive basis? It's because you'll never be clear of it. Because
Mhm.
every day they make sure to traumatize you more and more and more. Well, 9/11, Oklahoma City bombing, COVID, Pearl Harbor, uh, SARS, West Nile, Zika, Ebola, the
Mhm.
ozone layer, killer bees.
Planes
That's why.
crashing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just goes on, right? Gas shortage, Iran, Iraq, Taliban, ISIS, Al Qaeda. I mean, it never ends because they're always traumatizing you. So what it produces is a society that tells everybody I can't achieve because I have trauma. And that's perfect because that person has no financial strength, usually no physical strength, that no emotional strength, no spiritual strength, or they do, but it's just lower versions. So as the controller, yeah, I started the trauma-based repetition, and now I'm just going to feed in the repetitive content that I want you to act out, because weaker animals need the herd. Repetitive content reflects what the herd is doing. I'll give you an example I might have gave you the first time we talked. In 2001, there was a movie called Gone in 60 Seconds with Angelina Jolie and Nicolas Cage. It's a movie about car theft, a lot of repetitive themes and images of car theft. And when you're sitting in the theater, your subconscious doesn't know the difference. It's proven not to know the difference between real-time imagined thought, what's on the screen. So you're sitting in the cinema watching this screen, your loving subconscious mind is taking in the repetitive content of the screen and elbowing you, theoretically saying, hey, you changed tribes. We're in a car theft tribe, and maybe to fit in here, you want to adopt the tribal customs, traditions, and rituals. And when that movie came out in Burnaby, BC, Canada, Dr. Jerry Croth from Santa Clara University in California noted that car theft went up 70% in the first 4 days after the film. And it's a complete cycle. The mind control cycle is, if I already talked about caffeine because it weakens individuals. Weakened individuals react more to repetitive pressure, repetitive content, because it reflects what the herd is doing. Weak animals need the herd. Strong people do not need the herd. Like if I came into a Christmas party with people drinking alcohol and someone offered me a drink, I still feel the pressure of the drink, but I'm strong enough to say no.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why they feed you the M&Ms and the pop, and even the Mountain Dew has caffeine in it. Everything has caffeine in it because it's one of their favorite neurological disruption tools for strength. And the average person listening to this probably fully understands what I just said, but can't believe that almost everything that's around them is a mind control modality.
Hmm.
Even like psychiatric classifications or psychological classifications, like trauma or things that their therapist will tell them, it's all designed to make sure you are a non-threat, period. And if you're a non-threat, not only do you are so weak, you don't threaten the ruling structure. I mean, basically, you're so weak, you're always going to respond to the repetitive content that I put out through the media.
Hmm.
Because you'll go along with the jabs, and then you'll go along with the AI, and you'll go along with the digital ID, and you'll go along and go along and go along, right? Go along to get along. Weak people do that. So there's a big benefit for the ruling group to control the repetitive content and to poison as well. That's why everything's poison, because weaker animals are more susceptible to mind control. So, I mean, your Teflon pan is poison. your Tylenol is poison. Your Downy fabric softener is poison. Your birth control pill is poison. Your non-stick spray on your new couch is Teflon. It's the same as what's on your non-stick cookware. It's poison. It causes cancer and infertility. And if you layer those, like the more poison you take in, because it's convenient for you, right? You know, I spill Coke on there and it doesn't get through to the fabric, or I got a headache because I'm drinking alcohol poison. I'm going to the job I don't like, so I'll take a Tylenol so I can get through, you know, the day I don't even enjoy. If you layer on the poison, the more prone you are to be a helpless mind control victim.
Hmm.
So this group, so basically, if you want to understand how you're ruled, is that they've done studies where you'll have 100 healthy people and they'll sit in front of a movie screen and they'll use repetitive content and then watch their behaviors when those uninformed people go out into the world, and 30% are affected by the repetitive content on the screen. So that means 70% are free and clear unless I poison them.
Hmm.
So the more I poison them, I get 40%, 50%, 60%. So I'll give them some chocolate before they watch, some alcohol, some wine, some marijuana. I'll use the air conditioning system. I'll throw in a couple aerosols that are a little toxic, and I'll just start layering on the toxins. And what they found, the more toxic you are, the more the repetitive content on the screen hijacks your behavior and you believe it's your own, just like those people did with Gone in 60 Seconds in Burnaby, BC, Canada. They started stealing cars because that's the power. And no one looked like a zombie when they were stealing the cars. No one looked like they were under a spell. But that's what mind control is. You're under a spell, but it's just you doing
Hmm.
stuff that's really stupid, like standing in line and asking a crime syndicate to run your life for you every 4 years. I mean, and even that is a psyop, right? Like
Yeah, oh yeah, big
everything
time.
where so there's foundational ones where people can't even wrap their head around that it's a psyop, but obviously something that happened in 2020, obviously a psyop, and all psyops have starts and finishes. It's another characteristic of a psyop. And the strength of a psychological operation, it's front loaded. Like if you talked against the medical experiment or calling out what was going on in 2020, all this strength is front loaded. You got so much pushback. And look at the psyops ended. COVID's psyop is coming to an end because you can talk about it now and everybody's, yeah, the heart attacks, yeah, the strokes, yeah, the excess mortality, yeah, this, yeah, that. I mean, the booster rate is, less than 1%
Yep.
of the population. But it wasn't like that, was it, in 2020 or 2021?
No, not at
So
all.
we're right into another one. So they're very good at starting one. The strength is front loaded. You
Hmm.
catch a whole bunch of fish in the net, and then eventually it just fitters out. It falters and fails, and then but you grab those fish again in another net, and we're in another one right now.
Hmm.
And if people don't start understanding that these things have starts and finishes, there's goals. They did their goals. They got as many people. The compliance in the U.S. I think was 60%
Hmm.
for one medical experiment or more, and it had nothing to do with what was advertised. It had to do with something else that the ruling group wanted achieved, and they just said, we can't tell them what's in the needle. We're going to have to make something up, make it very repetitive. And fear, of course, makes people really weak. And weak animals comply with the
Hmm.
repetitive content more. Isolation scares people because it breaks them out of their habits and their routines. Nothing makes humans more at peace with themselves than their routine, even if it's futile or boring. So if you shut it down and keep them at home, can't go to the gym, can't go to work, they lose their minds and
Mhm.
they'll do anything to get back to the safety and security of the routine. So this group knows how to bend human psychology to make people do stuff, just like Darren Brown in The Push. He was the UK mind control expert that made The Push for Netflix. He got people to murder people. 75% of the participants in The Push murdered someone with only 2 hours of psychological manipulation. Pretty sure they can make you vote for people that don't have your
Mhm.
best interest. Pretty sure they can make you stand in line with your own children, that for stuff that has no benefit for you.
Mhm. Yeah, and one thing about like the politics, don't you think that they indoctrinate you with that from a young age? Because if you look at something like TV, look at a show like Family Ties, where Alex P. Keaton is the staunch Republican, the parents are the hippie Democrats. They're indoctrinating that into your mind that you have to be, involved in politics from a young age, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the media is what really runs people's
Hmm.
lives. It's really their ideas, they think, and they're all the same ruling group. I mean, the government, or what we believe is the government, sets the educational curriculum, and it's always going to back up what you're going to be seeing in the media. And it changes over time and over such a long period. People don't even realize that they're doing the gone in 60 seconds thing
Hmm.
all the time. Like if we go back to say the Waltons, and you're a young guy, I'm 55 years old, and you got the Waltons was an older sort of situational drama
Yeah.
where it was they lived, I don't know, in the mountains of Virginia or somewhere. It was at one big house. There was 7 or 8 children, and they all lived together and or little house on the prairies. Like
Yeah.
mom, dad, kids. Mom, dad, kids. And then you start getting into things like, Laverne and Shirley,
Hmm.
where the females aren't having kids, right? They want to go to the big city, want to dance to the jukebox. They want to earn their own money. There's beta males everywhere. That's another agenda. Weak males, Lenny and Squiggy, people who are older understand what I'm talking about here. And so you see over time, and that's the advantage this group has, is that they are secret societies and they work in like 50-year blocks, so you don't
Hmm.
notice, or they work in 100-year blocks, so you don't notice any of these things.
Yeah.
So we go from things like the Waltons, or I mean, even the Partridge Family. I think it was um, two divorcees getting together, right? So
Hmm.
that's where they started to break it in, or 8 is enough, where I think it was two divorced parents bringing 4 kids from, 4 kids each from
Yeah.
different marriages. So you can see the transition. And now all you got, like if you go to the sitcom called Mom today, it's just,
Oh yeah, I've worked on that actually.
oh, you worked on Mom?
Yeah, I used to do background work. I was in like the AA meeting scenes.
Yeah, yeah, that's hilarious because
Yeah.
that's in the trailer.
Hmm.
It's in the trailer for the TV show, and it's just a really disturbed, like trashy trailer park lady
Hmm.
and her very dysfunctional kids. And people don't even want to have kids anymore, and they don't even understand why. For this, it's the same reason they don't understand why they drink. They don't understand why they're single. They don't understand why they're lonely. They don't understand why they smoke marijuana. It's because of what I'm talking about,
Hmm.
because you will do to fit in, to find safety. Like your body's a safety seeking mechanism. There's no malfunction going on here.
Hmm.
So if you watch the shows of today and no one's having a kid, no one's having a family, everybody's divorced, everybody's having sex, and you're going to do it. And then you're going to do what they want you to do. They don't want any strength. And don't forget, I mean, if you were living like in 2020, if you were living in the Waltons home and there was 9 people in the one home who lived off the land, there was a strong mom and dad, and they needed some money, but not too much. They could have weathered the storm in 2020, the Waltons. But if you're single and you spend every cent you make on tattoos and piercings and drinking and smoking, and you live in a crappy apartment, there's no one there to help you, your parents are dysfunctional, you have no emotional resiliency. You have no emotional strength. You got no foundational strength to push back on the repetitive content, to take the shot and just keep going down Fun Factory Lane, wherever, they make the cities like amusement parks. So everything's about fun. Nothing's about spirituality or why you're here. They've made the whole society about the pursuit of fun and sex and hedonism. So of course they know what they're doing. If you're single at home, no kids, no prospects, and they also study sexual patterns. They know that a woman who hasn't had sex and she gets married, the chance she stays married is 85%. And if you had sex 3 times before you're married, the chances of you staying married 65%. And if you had why do you think they data mine the crap out of you? Because people are like, oh, they're watching me. And I'm like, they're not watching you. They're getting all that data to find out the truth of every single situation. And then they're going to weaponize it and put a warfare spin on it to take you down and make you even weaker. That's why they do it. That's exactly why they do it. They want to know. They want everybody's data so they know, like, if we can get the female having sex with 10 different people, she'll never get married or stay married more than 2 years. Things like that. And I don't mean just that one issue. There's millions of issues like that they want the cutting edge, razor sharp statistic to weaponize against the public.
Yeah. What do you say about somebody who, bases, starting a relationship or ending a relationship based on, past failed relationships or something? How do they get their mind reset? How do they suck themselves out of that?
Well, you can get yourself, because this system they've tried to hack the behavior system many ways, and they always said there's a one way. We've tried many ways. There's one way to hack the system to get that 800-pound gorilla dragging you in one direction or the other. You have to control your repetitive content. So whether you're traumatized or you're a chronic cocaine user, chronic masturbator, like chronic, overeater, or you want to lose weight, or you join a gym and you never go, all you need to do is start drowning the subconscious mind with repetition that's the opposite of your behavior. And then the subconscious starts saying, like elbowing you and saying, hey, we're in a new tribe. No one here is overweight. And not like if you exposed yourself to people that and it doesn't have to be in real time. It can just be by video. You could put pictures up around the house. You can do thin hypnosis. All you need to do is trick that 800-pound gorilla, the subconscious, to believe that safety is found over there in that tribe and not in the shitty tribe. That's all you got to do. And even though you'll go out in the world, you'll go to the grocery store and you'll see a whole bunch of people in electronic scooters who are overweight, that repetition is going to go in too. But you got to go out there. You got to buy groceries. You got to get out of the house. You still want, it's a war of repetition. And most people today are drowning themselves in, say, Netflix, which is death and murder and mayhem and negativity and depression. And they wonder why they walk with their heads down and they're negative and nothing's going good for them, because the mind is a lot more odd than anybody. Like when you do the research, the mind is really odd. There's basically what you think can change your body.
Yep.
I'll give you an example, okay? There's something called phantom pregnancy, and it's not hidden. You can look it up on Google right now, phantom pregnancy. Like WebMD will probably be your first hit because it's accepted. But what is phantom pregnancy? It's the lady. You remember I said the subconscious can't tell the difference between imagined thought, real time, and what's on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Right. She thinks she's pregnant repetitively. Guess what happens to her body? It acts like it's pregnant.
Oh,
So she
mm-hmm.
starts gaining weight, cellulite, the abdomen starts to inflame. The breasts have even found to enlarge and express breast milk. They've even found the amniotic sac attached in the uterus, no fetus. She's not pregnant. She
Yeah.
never was. She
Mm-hmm.
never was pregnant, but the repetitive content changed the metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this has to do with quantum physics, vibration theory, morphic resonance, like what Rupert Sheldrake talks about. And people don't know that the group ruling us also know this about vibration and how it can change the body. And it can attract things to you. Quantum physics is more like a video game. And here's how quantum physics sort of works. All potentials are basically open to you. And a video game engineer was talking to a quantum physicist one time in an interview, and basically the video game engineer said, like if you were on one of those games where you hold the gun and you see the gun in front of you as you're walking, whatever it is, right? The video game engineer said the path to the left is there. The path to the right is there. You can even use the joystick. You can walk backwards. But if you don't move the joysticks in those directions, the video game doesn't generate those options. And the quantum physicist says that's exactly the same as quantum physics, is that unless you take action, basically nothing different is going to manifest in your life. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
you're already in a video game.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing anything and you're watching Netflix, what vibration or ideas are getting thrown into your nervous system are all
Yeah.
negative, low vibration. They're dark. They're just, they're full of despair and depression. Guess what manifests and, manifests in your real life? And that's another aspect of self-sabotage, because we're only copying what we see. And oddly enough, quantum physics sort of works like that as well, as our life is nothing more than what vibration we're vibrating our frequency out at. So we have to
Mm-hmm.
be very, very careful about what we allow into our eyes and our ears. And most people have no discernment with what they're watching. And
Mm-hmm.
Netflix, here's another thing. The guy that owns Netflix is Randolph. I can't remember his name, but his last name is Randolph, and he's Edward Bernays's great nephew.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Mm-hmm.
Right. So Edward Bernays is a master mind controller. He's a propagandist. He is a brainwash expert, and he brainwashed women to smoke in 1929 or 1931, using a phrase called torches of freedom. If anybody wants to look that up on YouTube, look up Edward Bernays, Torches of Freedom. Basically, just know that Netflix is an official CIA brainwashing operation.
Mm-hmm.
And all it's there for is to give you the repetitive content to follow, where the average person just thinks when the movie's over, I just get up, go to bed, and do the regular thing the next day. But you will do the regular thing, but you're doing the regular thing because of the shows you watch, and they know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's very powerful, and I think you'll agree, is the power of reading books, whether it be like The Magic of Thinking Big, Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus, Ways of a
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual Man. And one quote that resonates with me that I'm sure you've heard several times is when Earl Nightingale said, "The strangest secret is you become what you think about most of the time."
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. So whether we want to listen to great motivational speakers like that, or whether you want to study quantum physics or self-sabotage psychology, brainwashing, mind control, it's all the same stuff. It's
Hmm.
all the same, or The Secret, right?
Yeah.
It's all the same. The repetitive content of your environment somehow dictates your entire life.
Hmm.
And even if you have a good environment, subconsciously, again, with the trauma potentially, it can be an old jukebox record playing in your mind. But that's when you got to get into a little bit of hypnosis. You got to relax the body, right? Make it a little stronger. Relaxation,
Hmm.
so well, kind of makes it in the opposite direction sometimes. But you got to get in and interface with the subconscious mind. That's
Hmm.
what you got to do. And hypnosis is the quickest way to hack the subconscious and really pile in the repetitive content that you want it to run. You want a new record in the jukebox. You want to be thin instead of overweight. You want to attend the gym instead of joining and never going. You want to quit smoking. You want to quit marijuana. You have to do basically some hypnosis. And I tell people, look, if you want to email me at info@jchristoff.com, single initial J, Christoff is Christ with an OFF on the end. I'll not only give you the push, but if you want a hypnosis to overcome your problem, just name your three biggest problems. I'll give you a free hypnosis out of my reprogramming library, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Excellent. Yeah. And one other thing I've noticed, is even with like they're making a push not only to get rid of reading, but what they do want you to read. Because I was on vacation last week and went to the to in Columbus, Ohio, and I was at the library. And what are they doing? They're giving you like 8 copies of New York Times bestseller of indoctrination books, and that's all that they're pushing upon you.
And this is what this group is famous for. So the
Hmm.
average person's at a big disadvantage is that when they go to the bookstore, especially in an airport, all the books are the same. The messaging is repetitive across the world. And it's also been shown that if your brain wave is synced to an indoctrination book and then my brain wave is synced to the same, we're giving out like the brain waves of maybe 10
Hmm.
people, not two.
Oh yeah.
There's an amplification effect, and the brain waves really affect other people invisibly. Like, for example, there's something called the McClintock effect, where they found that women in a sorority, they're not telling each other when their menstrual cycles are, but they all sync up,
Mm.
right? There's an invisible communication, a photonic communication. There's light bundles called photons, like almost throwing everything about us, our data, to another person so that maybe we can copy it and be their friend.
Hmm.
And so the thing about the McClintock effect is when the female's menstrual cycles sync, it's almost like this is how intensely our body wants to befriend someone else. We'll even do it on an energetic basis, a menstrual cycle basis. It's almost like we elbow them energetically and say, "Hey, Phyllis, I'm June. Our periods are the same. We can be friends." This is how much we need everybody to sort of almost act the same, sort of on a genetic basis or a survival basis, is there's actually invisible mimicking. And that's why this group knows as well is when you have 150 million people watch the Super Bowl, they're really taking advantage of syncing up the
Hmm.
brain waves because everybody's watching the same thing. And this is why they call it a ritual, is because that brainwave of 150 million people can actually affect probably 6 billion people. And this is why it's always dark and depressing and full of despair and, you know, two bulls fighting. This is the red versus the blue bull. That's what it's always about: conflict and fighting. It's
Hmm.
never about cooperation and concession. This is the general vibration that really benefits the ruling group, is conflict and fighting.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've noticed it all too well. And since you mentioned the Super Bowl, It's funny because I was working that day. I had no interest in it. I'm like you. I could care less about that. But the ones that I was working with had no interest either. They're like, if a meteor struck, we wouldn't, we would love to see a meteor strike the Super Bowl. I mean, I think more and more people are waking up because myself included. I used to be a big sports fan and just, cut it out. I said there's better things to be doing. I could be, reading a book. I could be out, taking a stand for humanity. You name it. And more people are. I get so many people are still sucked into the bread and circuses, but so many people are using better use of their time and realizing what these events are about.
I think people are getting stronger because, of
Hmm.
course, the group pressure, it comes back to those basic pillar concepts. Group pressure is very strong. If you're a strong individual, you don't need to participate in the group. And
Hmm.
so, as a society, we are getting stronger. I've even found this year, same thing as you. You're seeing people not watch the Super Bowl, more people. I'm seeing people quit alcohol.
Ah,
I've seen
yes.
more
Hmm.
people quit
Yeah.
alcohol in the past 5 years than I've ever seen in the 30 years prior, as
Hmm.
sort of someone who also talks about health quite a bit. So people are getting stronger, which is not good for the ruling group because strong humans don't comply as much as weak humans.
Hmm.
And this is why they really want to digital ideas and backdoor the e-prison, because they'll always going to end with weakening us as their top priority, whether we eat crickets or they're going to throw more lawn darts into our shoulders or whatever they want to do. It's all about weakening, whether they
Hmm.
take food away from us or food ration us because of this fake issue or that fake issue. I want people to know, regardless of what attack you're going to feel, it's always to weaken you. Food
Hmm.
restriction. And one of the big ones, of course, is cholesterol and saturated fat do really good for the brain and really good for the strength of the human body. For most people, for the grand majority of people, cholesterol is very healthy. Saturated fat's very healthy. And this is the average person's going with less eggs now. They're attacking the meat and they want to feed us crickets. And what's funny about crickets and some of the little critters they want to feed us is that the shell of the cricket, not let's take this to the full extent. Let's pretend we're in an e-prison in a 15-minute city and we have no meat, period. So we're not getting
Hmm.
any exogenous saturated fat. We're not getting any exogenous cholesterol. Our liver can make cholesterol for us if we need to repair some of the tissues in our body. The cricket shell is a chitin. It's called chitin. Chitins interfere with our own liver's ability to make cholesterol. I'm telling you, this group
Yeah.
have been theorizing and having board meetings in these high towers. Everything that will weaken us, they're into because weak
Hmm.
animals comply more with the repetitive content, following along, going along to get along, and being a good time Sally and a really good guy Jim.
Hmm. Now, what do you say? Because I'm sure you've seen it. There's a website out that lists, the smart city. Like for instance, I was in Columbus, Ohio last weekend, visiting a friend, and both Columbus and Dublin, which is a suburb of Columbus, basically the same area, are on this list. They go to the meetings for the smart city, initiatives to become a smart city. If somebody's living in one of these areas, what would their game plan be, or should they leave?
Well, basically, the game plan, if people want to stop the evil,
Hmm.
and I would really suggest they do because this group, they're not sort of wanting to put you in a 15-minute city in order to keep taxing you. They actually want to
No.
murder you. They want to
Hmm.
murder you. So I know this group. I've researched them a lot. I do have to be sharp with my description of people, like it's a social, spiritual contract I have with humanity. They're not just trying to tax you at 60%. They actually want to kill you and then take your house,
Hmm.
take your bank account, take your boat, take your cottage, because it's the evolution of piracy. This is like when you give, if you've noticed, whoever's listening right now, if you've noticed There is no law that you've ever heard in your lifetime where the government has a maximum level of taxation that they can't exceed. And this group who are masquerading as your government, they will put up actors to best manipulate you. But these are pirates, and they knew, like in Canada, there was no tax before 1915. They knew that, and they knew that in 100 years, the goal is to kill them and take any wealth they have. But how do you get there? How do you go from no taxation to killing people and taking all the stuff they ever saved and then starting the whole cycle over again? Well, you got to do it incrementally, because that's when the average human doesn't understand. So basically, if you want to avoid any of this terror that you're going to guarantee for your grandchildren, you have to, number one, get healthy, because healthy people don't comply with group pressure. So that's the first thing you got to do. You got to go read this book by Paul Chek. It's called How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. And Chek is C-H-E-K. It's the only book you'll ever need. And so you get healthy and realize, okay, that's not good enough. But it's a good start, because then not only will you be stronger and be able to resist group pressure more, which is one of their main weapons, a healthy neurology system. So you have a front of the brain and a back of the brain. The back of the brain's really stupid. And that's where they like to rule you from. If your back of the brain is really active, it's called the limbic system, fear-based, polluted-based. It's really primal. It means like you're like a caveman and cavewoman. All you really care about is food, sex, and shelter. Pretty dumb caveman, primal operation. Really easy to rule that person. But when you're healthy, you move electricity from the back of the brain to the front, called the prefrontal cortex or frontal lobe. That part of the brain really hard to manipulate. Fully adult, rational, logical, thinks long-term. This dumb one back here thinks short-term. This one's like a child. This one's like an adult. This one doesn't know God. The front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, knows God. This is why this is called the temple, because this is the temple. Right? And for you to be active in the temple, talking to God with the transmission equipment you already got in there, you're going to have the activity in the blood flow and near the front of the forehead. You got to be healthy. And then you got to become like a reporter, fair and unbiased, get the facts. You can become a blogger, write some articles, and link a lot of concerns. And this is everybody. If you're thinking someone else to do the blog, or a vlog would be, a video report, or a podcast like you're doing, Mark. This is fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got to be like Mark. I mean, probably pretty cheap to get the camera going. I got a bit more of an expensive camera. Got a light
Exactly.
over here. I do like an interview a day every
Oh,
day
I'm
for the
sure.
full do about 300 interviews a year. So I got to have more complex equipment. But whether you want to start a podcast, write an article, even hold your phone and walk down the street giving your own thoughts, you got to get healthy. And every single person, you can't hide from it. You have to become a reporter of things that are happening of concern. And then you have to start getting together after that. But first two, health. So you don't have to go find Fauci, or you don't have to find Trudeau, or whoever the next Satanist choice in Canada, Mark Carney. I guess Satan wasn't available.
Yeah.
You don't have to go find these people. All you need to do is find your kitchen, which is easy. Open the kitchen fridge. It's easy. Open the cupboards. Are you under mind control? Because one of the primary mind control processes is to trick you to poison yourself and your own kids.
Hmm.
How much poison are you eating? How much you're brushing your teeth with fluoride? You're poisoning yourself. It's one of their favorite poisons is fluoride.
Hmm.
How many other poisons have you been tricked through the repetitive content to integrate into your life? And then you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I took the COVID shot, or I can't believe I work a job I don't like, or I'm thrice divorced and
Hmm.
40 pounds overweight. Don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
You're overeating, they impregnate into you with the repetitive content. They hijack your brain during COVID with the repetitive content. Whether you smoke or you're addicted to porn, cocaine, marijuana, they're doing it through repetitive content. And the
Hmm.
stronger you are, the healthier you are, the more you investigate how this horse and pony show works, the less likely, it's not a guarantee that you're going to be impervious or immune to mind control, but every level you ratchet your health up and your strength up and your knowledge up, because
Hmm.
intelligence is a form of strength, the less likely you're going to comply with the next psyop. And given all
Yeah.
psyops start and end, you better understand the patterns, because the COVID nonsense looks really
Hmm.
different than the Trump stuff going on,
Oh
but it
yeah.
has the same characteristics. And if you're on the Trump train and you knew people that were on the COVID train, you're on for the same reason, even though you might be
Hmm.
on at each
Thank
other's
you.
throat. Just understand, like you're just responding to the repetitive content
Hmm.
as your internal mechanisms are designed. Nothing wrong with either of you. There's no malfunction, but please understand the characteristics of a psychological operation so that at least you can see the next one when this one falls to the wayside.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
one thing, you encouraged me to do the go on the streets and make videos, and I was doing that on TikTok, and then I noticed, the psyop when TikTok went down for 10 hours and it said TikTok is back because of Trump. And then I watched the video and I guess I can't verify this, that Meta bought TikTok. From what I heard, that's what transpired, and that's why it went down and said Trump has saved the day. The day before he gets inaugurated, this comes
Right.
out. It's down for 10 hours in the US.
It's basically just like they probably needed to download all your data
Hmm.
and
Oh, good point.
had to shut it down just to do the big data dump and get you
Hmm.
guys back online, because the data again is, I'll tell you a funny story so that you can understand why they want the data.
Hmm.
There's a documentary called The Code, CODE. It was made by the BBC, I think. When
Okay.
BBC, but they don't really know that, like if you have someone like me watching documentaries, I'll pick up a lot of things that are different. So this guy is talking about the codes around the world, like hidden codes in the ether, hidden codes in the universe, the laws of nature. And so they go into a huge office tower and they go with a huge glass jar of jelly beans. I don't mean a small one, pretty big glass jar. And there's about 800 people in the office tower, and they take a guess of every single person. What's funny is like the ranges were crazy. I mean, obviously there was thousands in there,
Hmm.
okay? And one guy just said like 50, and you're laughing at him because there's 50 just in a little bit. And then someone's like, oh, it's 150,000. Obviously, it's not that much, but
Yeah.
regardless, there's 800 guesses.
Hmm.
They took every guess and they averaged it, and it was within one jelly bean.
Mm.
That is why they want your data,
Hmm.
because what that means is that in all the information, there's truth right in the middle. You can
Hmm.
ask any question you want. Where's Ethereum price going to be in 2 days? What's Bitcoin? Where's gold going? Are they going to rebel? How, you can ask anything with all the data and you'll get the answer that's so close to the truth you can dominate the world. Please understand that's why they want your data.
Hmm. Yeah. I understand totally. I get where you're going with this.
It's a
Uh,
God, it's a God-seeking
mhm.
device. It's like you can take the place of God because you can know everything that's going to happen before it
Well,
happens.
well, even like the cards that you scan, like the Kroger card or whatever it may be, they're collecting all your data, what you buy, this, that, and the other. And so many people have said, don't even use those cards because you don't want them tracking you.
Yeah, and people will do it to save $2. I mean, that's what's going to be on the grave of the average person. I save $5 at the grocery store, and now I live in an e-prison. I mean, this is
Hmm.
this is the this is what we call the human condition. It's a
Yeah.
bit naive, a bit stupid, a bit stunned, but this group knows you got to move slow so that the
Hmm.
average Joe doesn't figure this out.
Yeah. And a part of the reason, like with me, with my lighting is because, I'm still clinging on to the incandescent light bulbs. In North Carolina, we still have, a hardware store that was bold and said, screw the government when they banned incandescent light bulbs. And it's funny, when I was in Ohio, I went to the hardware store to see if they had incandescent light bulbs. And he's like, oh, no, you're not going to find them anymore. And I said, well, wait a minute. Trump brought him back. And his
Right.
response was, no. His response was, well, you're not going to find him here in Columbus.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, I got yellow above me, but you're right, I have an LED ring light.
Hmm.
And these ring lights, these blue lights, of course, are dangerous for the health. And
Hmm.
I'm healthy enough, I believe, to sustain a couple hours a day. But you know what? The average person probably not, especially with their diets and their lifestyle. So it's really important. The health aspect is something everybody can do. And don't
Hmm.
worry, it's about progress. It's not about perfection. Like if you're drinking 3 cups of coffee a day and you go down to two, that's 30% decrease. You should be happy with yourself. If
Hmm.
you're drinking 1 bottle of wine a night and you go down to half a bottle, that's 50% decrease. Your body's going to be ecstatic and very happy. And then you make a contract with yourself, you keep it, that builds strength. The lack of poison builds more strength, and hopefully you parlay that extra strength into something more powerful down the road. It's all about making contracts with yourself, keeping your word to yourself, and learning what strength and discipline is all about, because it's not your fault they took your discipline away, making sure to give
Hmm.
you everything you ever wanted without doing too much. Comfort's a drug, and more people die of comfort addiction today than any other addiction.
Yeah. And one thing with me, I said, that I've really cut down the sports. Like I really don't really watch much, but I did decide to go to the Michigan Ohio State basketball game. That's a big rival and they
Yeah,
hate each
yeah.
other. It's all sides, like can't we all just get along? So I made sure that, being in Columbus, Ohio, that I'm not wearing anything Michigan. So I'm there wearing, my Rage Against Big Pharma t-shirt. Sadly, the whole crowd was probably, under mind control and didn't get what I was wearing, but.
Yeah, they're just going to be there, like George Soros does the color revolutions. Everybody's
Hmm.
got a color on, everybody's got a side, and that's what they want. I mean, you're just cheering for the color. That's
Hmm.
what it comes
Yeah,
down to, and
exactly.
that's what the program is. I mean, you're just cheering for the jersey because, like in the NHL, you're going to love a player, say on the Toronto
Hmm.
Maple Leafs, but if he gets traded to the Canadians, the next time he comes, they boo him. So,
Exactly.
so,
Hmm.
so you're not really cheering for the players; you're cheering
No.
for the jersey.
Hmm.
And that's how they pre-program you to cheer for the red or the blue on the political side, because
Hmm.
it's all about colors. And that's why George Soros is famous for his color revolution, because humans really love cheering for their color tribe. And again, they're just hacking our natural design. It's not that hard. And it could be used for good, but they don't use it for good. And we have to realize that.
Hmm. Exactly. Well, we've been going for about 45 minutes, and I know that your time is precious. So I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. If someone wants to reach out to you or, get involved with one of your programs, please give the information.
I think the best thing, I mean, I'm on Facebook
Hmm.
and Instagram, Jason Christoff again. Christoff is Christ with an OFF. But I would just say, look, maybe get a copy of the push. I'll give it to you for free. It's really hard to find. Email me at info@jchristoff.com. If you want the hypnotherapy for one of your addictions, email me, or just email me as well at info@jchristoff.com. I'll put you on my private email list. I send out reports about 3 to 4 times a week, just 4 sections, really easy to read. And maybe something catches your eye, maybe not. But we're just trying to always educate about self-sabotage, which is just mind control, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
brainwashing and psychological manipulation, where they're going. Because don't forget, if you know where they're going,
Mm-hmm.
because you're a mind control expert, sometimes you know where gold is going, or silver's going, or Bitcoin's going, or when the crash is going, or what, don't buy real estate right now. The market's going to crash this year. We predict as well where the markets go, or maybe you don't know when they're going to sell your house to get the top dollar. Are you going to do it now? Are you going to do it later? So we really try to use the science of psychology intertwined with watching all these dark social engineers to try and predict what their next move is. And we've been pretty good at predicting. We're usually about 12 weeks in front of them where they're going, which can sometimes mean the difference between feast or famine for some people
Mm-hmm.
economically.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, thanks so much, Jason. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. You are a world of knowledge.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you. And thanks for letting me talk to your audience today. I hope they got some benefit.
Oh, for sure. That is without a doubt.